Tukohama, Tawoa, and Kitava went to the lake to fish. Tawoa weaved a net to catch the fish. Tukohama built a fire to cook the fish. And Kitava swallowed the entire lake, fish and all, with a single gulp. By the 10th act of Path of Exile 1's campaign, Kitava, the Karui god of hunger, towers above the burning, bloody wreckage of the once great island realm of Oriath. Canonically, he bested us, the Exile, in his first appearance, but were saved by a god of the Templars, Sin. How does Kitava manage to nearly slay us? What led up to this moment of near death for us, and, at the end of PoE 1's campaign, the demise of the Karui god of hunger? The tale is well worth the listen. Here's the story of PoE 1's Act 5 and Act 10 boss, Kitava, the Insatiable. This is RJ. Welcome to another Path of Exile video on Talkative Triceratops. If you enjoy this type of content, hit the subscribe button and sub-notification bell for consistent lore and discussion videos about the best games out there. Now, let's begin. Kitava the Insatiable wasn't always a god. In the realm of Wraeclast, most gods began as humans like us exiles, villains such as High Templar Dominus, and allies akin to Zana Caesarius, Einhar the Beastmaster, and our beloved Commander Kirak. Godhood doesn't mean immortality, though, as we'll soon discover. Once, Kitava was a Karui, a culture native to Wraeclast, and that's where this tale begins. Let us travel back to the distant past of Wraeclast, when the Karui dominated the wicked realm and Kitava's gluttony formed. Various peoples roam and dominate Wraeclast, from the Karui to the Val. Though the differences between these two cultures are extreme, influential individuals in both manage to amass a following large enough to instill themselves with incredible power. When humans in both cultures do this, they ascend to godhood and become titans in comparison to their brethren across Wraeclast. Examples of gods include Tangmazu, a trickster god who could manipulate other gods and recently appeared in Delirium. Solaris, an Asmiri goddess capable of great death and even greater life. Lunaris, another Asmirian goddess and Solaris' sister, caught in battle with her forever thanks to Tangmazu. Soagath, a malformed god of sea and storm who was once a beloved seafaring people's chieftain. And we'll talk about him soon. Ralakesh, a cruel, ruthless Val god called the God of Many Faces. Tukohama, a war-mongering Karui god of battle and destruction, nicknamed the Father of War. And Kitava, a Karui god of hunger and chaos, also the subject of this video. Though all their paths to become deities are unique, the start, as stated before, is the same. They must gather large swaths of worshippers. Then, what is Kitava's road to the status of deity? We don't quite know, but we can speculate based on stories laid out by Karui people we do know, such as the Karui slave named Atula we'll learn more about later. Kitava begins as a ravenous Karui, surely, and he rises to godhood as a representative of one of the most base desires of humanity, hunger. His followers yearned to consume and conquer, to feed their primal urges and their primal deity. Utula's stories recount many of Kitava's interactions with the two other Karui gods we know much about, Hinekora, called the Mother of Death, and Tukohama, named the Father of War. These pieces of lore color Kitava's early days and form the basis of the Karui culture, which is heavily influenced by all of their deities. The brief story about Kitava consuming the pond when his brethren readied to gather the fish from it at the beginning of this video is one of those stories. Here's the beginning of another, from the mouth of Atula himself, about Kitava's hunger and his punishment at the hands of his own kin.
Arohongui, daughter of the moon, was preparing for a feast to celebrate Tukohama's return from his war on the first ones of the Ezamites. Tafor, son of the forest, asked each of the birds to sacrifice one of their kind for the feast. He gave these offerings to Arohongui, who cooked them in a great fire-stone pit. Seeing all of those plump birds cooking made Kitava very hungry, and he offered to watch them, to make sure they didn't burn while Arohongui rested during the heat of the day. Arohongui thanked Kitava for his kindness, but while she slept, Kitava ate the cooking birds, flesh, bones, gizzards and all. Upon waking, Arohongui was furious to find that Kitava had lied to her, for saying that he would watch the birds when he truly intended to eat them all up. When Tukohama arrived home in his mighty canoe, Arohongui asked him to punish Kitava for his selfish gluttony. Tukohama, our father of war, agreed and pulled the sharpest tooth from his own mouth. He then asked Arohongui and Tafor to hold Kitava fast while he cut Kitava's face with the tooth. 2 slashes that blinded Kitava and formed a bleeding cross upon his face. From that day forth, Kitava would never be able to promise to watch that which he truly intended to consume.
The story continues and explains further assaults on Kitava by his brethren. The goddess Hinekora lashes Kitava with a whip of her own hair after he consumes even more food from the sea. Eventually, Hinekora then binds Kitava deep in the underworld, where he is left to rot and suffer for thousands of years. In this terrible isolation, his hunger gurgles to the surface and manifests into sheer craving to eat and to avenge himself. If he ever escaped, he pledges, he would cook and consume all within Hinekora's domain, no matter the cost, as we'll soon see. To many of the Kurui slaves in Oriath, the god of hunger's early life mirrors much of their own, especially if a charismatic leader preaches to hungry, tortured masses of Kitava's good graces and the destruction he would commit upon their vile overseers. It's understandable. In a world rife with terror and flame, when promised a way out and a way to avenge those lost and an act of revenge upon those who do evil, many would take the opportunity. However, that wasn't the way of one of the greatest Kurui in recent memory, Kaom the Conqueror. He dismissed Kitava as a foul god, as one of the creatures that led to the downfall of his great people. He claims the Eternals allowed Kitava to enter this realm, and together they corrupted his people and destroyed the Kurui culture. For Tukohama, the father of war, he sought to destroy Kitava's influence upon his people and restore the Kurui's glory, as told by Kaom himself in the weathered carvings found throughout Wraeclast.
The Eternals opened the gate and invited Kitava into this land. The Karui paid the price. Kitava cut us off from the ancestors, raised the remembered as his children, tortured our dreams. Kitava murdered the Karui way. I will found a new way, for I have been chosen. I gather my forces so that I might wage war on Kitava. I am the son of Tukohama, and I will lead the Karui back to glory.
Ultimately, as we're about to discover, Kaom of the Kurui failed. Finally, we arrive to Path of Exile 1's campaign. After overcoming our struggles in Wraeclast against more human and grounded villainy and scum, we teleport back to Oriath, the point of origin for most exiles of Wraeclast and the corrupt Templars who reopened mankind's venture into thaumaturgy. In Oriath, we seek the death of the current High Templar, a man named Avarius, and after our victory over Malachi and the Beast, more on that in a previous video, we sweep confidently through the city as the Oriathan's Kurui slaves rise up. The former station of Oriath's slave masters, the Overseer's Tower, serves as our base of operations alongside new allies, Lani, Valenta, Bannon, and Atula, who is a faithful worshipper of Kitava, the immortal slave. He is also the head of the slave rebellion in Oriath and speaks of Kitava as the god, capital G, the one who will save all the Kurui and bring about their rise to power once more. Solo, we annihilate the leader of the Templars, High Templar Avarius, and unleash Innocence, a Templar god housed inside the Zealot. Under his quiet command, the Templars murdered millions over the course of their activity in Wraeclast and beyond, but now we're here to take the god of purity down. Despite an illuminating battle in the deity's sanctum, we drive him out. However, with Innocence's apparent demise, Atula, the master of the Kurui slave rebellion in Oriath, seizes the opportunity and beckons Kitava to Oriath, and the ravenous god answers the charismatic leader's call. The madness overtaking Oriath greatens. Kitava's cultists raze the city as we scour it for answers to the deity's arrival. With the help of another Templar god named Sin, Innocence's polar opposite brother, the supposed creator of the beast, and therefore a helper of humanity, we discover the sign of purity. Wading through hordes of Kitava's new followers, we find and kill Atula, punishing him for his summoning of Kitava, and then we fight our way to the deadly deity. The sign of purity in our grasp, we rise to the cathedral rooftop to end the terror of the ravenous god and the uprising of the Karui. Kitava's true form hides beneath layers of gray stone, but as we command the sign of purity and assault the god, the rock chips away to reveal the crimson and horned horror, two massive maws on his head and chest. He is as the Karui legends describe, a giant beast scarred by his brethren and forced to become a creature of savagery and hate. And we are no match for the Father of Chaos. As the final chunk of rock topples from his fiery form, he wields the latent magic of Wraeclast and concocts a blood-red explosion that corrupts the sign of purity and would have downed us forever. But Sin, the Templar god, swoops in and saves us at the final moment. Kitava scars us in a unique manner, tearing at our mortal fabric and weakening our resistance to the natural elements of the world and the chaos energy crackling about. We cannot defeat Kitava presently. We must put other gods to rest across Wraeclast first. We must prepare for the ravenous god. Alongside Sin, we do exactly that. Soagath and Solaris, Ralakesh and Tukohama, we add all their heads to our growing belt. All will be featured in upcoming videos. Onward, though, to our second meeting with Kitava in PoE 1's 10th Act. Swimming in the power of the Pantheon, plenty of passive skill points, and excellent off-the-ground gear, we take a new path back to Oriath to rendezvous with allies new and old. By sail, we land in the Oriath docks. We lock horns with Kitava once again after allying ourselves with Sin and his brother, who seeks redemption and an end to Kitava's hunger, innocence. Crushing through the ruins of Oriath, we tear away the walls guarding Kitava and run along a trough feeding the all-devouring god the bodies of humans and animals, living and dead. At long last, we face Kitava again with Sin and Innocence at our side. Kitava's power has grown since we last battled. He breathes all-consuming flames upon the battlefield. He summons spheres of battering red power and X's that represent the scars across his own eyes. With our skill and the brilliant beams of the Templar gods, Kitava's heart lurches from his maw of a chest multiple times throughout the battle, and we tear it apart, time after time, until it explodes in a nova of blood and gore. Breathless, Kitava reaches out toward us and the Templar gods a final time. The Father of Chaos, the ravenous god, the cannibal king, the tormented one, beyond ancient, member of the oldest cabal of gods, dies by our hand, by the exile's hand. And in that moment, Oriath is free. Free of the pure dominion of Innocence and his Templars. Free of Kitava and his voracious followers. Free to rebuild and become a bright star in a dark realm. Well, for a brief time? But that's for another video, fellow exiles. Succinctly, that's the story of Kitava, the Insatiable, the ultimate boss of Path of Exile 1's 5th and 10th acts. He is a deity with a somewhat heartbreaking history, a life that prodded him into the nasty, voracious, chaotic creature he is when we confront him high above the lowest reaches of Oriath. Regardless, this 4.8 million HP deity has a great story, and I hope this video helped you come to understand it well. Let me know. How much of Kitava's story did you know before watching this video? How many bits and pieces did you pick up during your clear of the axe on your first playthrough? Or your latest playthrough, perhaps in the current Arch-Nemesis League? And a final question to ponder. What or who do you think the final boss of Path of Exile 2's next campaign will be? The final boss of PoE 1's campaign was Kitava, a god, an ancient god. I don't think PoE 2 will take the same approach, but we'll see. This is RJ. Thanks for watching another Path of Exile video on Talkative Triceratops. If you enjoyed the story of Kitava, Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video and others with your fellow exiles, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Farewell.